about the symbolism and stuff than a self-loathing Canadian like I would be. But his video is still just such a perfectly constructed, tight little summary of exactly what our money looks like and why it looks the way it does. Channel number 2 is quite similar to Half Asleep Chris in a lot of ways. It is called Name Explain, and it is run by a guy called Patrick Foote. Patrick is also a Brit, and his videos are all about explaining the origins of place names.
What exactly is the difference between the Netherlands and Holland? And why was the name changed from Abyssinia to Ethiopia? What came first, the turkey or the turkey?
And sometimes people's names too.
Why did Malcolm Little use the name Malcolm X? The name was born with Joseph Stalin, but did it die with him too? What is the first name in recorded history?
His channel also has a very strong visual gimmick in that all of his videos are 100% illustrated. He has these funny little watercolor type drawings that he uses to provide visual aid to the things he's describing. What I really like about channels like Chris and Patrick's is how the amount of effort they put into their videos really speaks to their commitment to clear communication with their audience. You know, when it comes to making a video, it is the easiest thing in the world to just punch some words into Google image search and then put those pictures up in little boxes beside you. Or just use some generic stock footage website to provide these really bland, generic on-screen depictions of what you're talking about. So I think it is really quite heroic when creators go the extra mile and actually create unique visual aids to help their audience understand what they're explaining, rather than just satisfy themselves with what the internet has to offer. It is something, frankly, that I wish I would do more of on my own channel. On the personality front, Patrick is also very charming and innocent. At a time when so many people on YouTube are kind of snarky and sarcastic, it is really refreshing to come into contact with somebody who is just kind of bursting with a sort of excitement to help you learn stuff. I think it brings a sort of genuine pleasure to the viewer when the creator is so clearly motivated by a sort of genuine pleasure on his end. Next one is a channel called Down the Rabbit Hole, run by a guy called Frederick Knudsen. Now this one is quite a gear shift from the previous two channels because Frederick makes videos that are almost exclusively about rather dark subject matter. He has a fantastic video on the famous New York hoarders known as the Collier brothers, for instance, and a really good one on plague doctors of the Middle Ages. Frederick's main talent is just that he is a really good storyteller. His ability to craft a compelling narrative is incredibly strong, pretty much of the same quality you'd expect on a professionally made, you know, like documentary on the History Channel or something. He makes very good use of things like foreshadowing, which makes you want to keep watching even when the videos are quite long.
What none of these onlookers could have suspected, however, was that soon, Gene Ray would acquire his first truly enthusiastic and earnest adherent. The writer expected some people in the Final Fantasy community to see this, but he couldn't expect the sort of attention it would receive. This page very quickly became one of the most popular on the website, and set in motion the exponential growth of interest in Christian Weston Chandler, as well as the efforts to tease and harass him.
As you can see, he has this very dry way of talking, which I think only adds to the sort of creepiness factor of the often very disturbing subjects that he's describing. My favorite video of his is this one, about a guy called Christian Chandler, better known as Chris Chan, better known as Sonichu. I don't want to oversell it, but I can honestly say this is perhaps one of the strangest videos I have ever watched in my entire life. The story of Chris Chan is such an incredible tale of like mental illness, meets fanatic fandom, meets cyberbullying, meets like every other disorder of the 21st century. You really need to watch Frederick tell this story, particularly if you have absolutely no idea of what the Sonichu phenomenon is. Next channel is Big Joel, who I mentioned in passing in a previous video. Big Joel, whose real name is Henry, does videos on film criticism, which is not a topic I thought I would be much interested in because I don't really like movies all that much. But his videos aren't really about movies so much as they use movies as an entry point for talking about bigger ideas in philosophy. One of the consistent themes of his channel is that we humans tell stories to each other in an effort to communicate certain ideas of morality, but in practice, a lot of these stories wind up having very confused and contradictory concepts of right and wrong. This all sounds very high-minded, and it is. Henry is a very brilliant guy, and I am often in awe of his ability to deconstruct multiple layers of meaning, even in like a very basic work like Shark Tale.
When you want to know how a film constructs its message, you can't just look at the images it provides, extrapolate what those images might mean, and then conclude that that's what the movie is about. You also have to look at the way that those images are framed by the characters in the movie. And in the case of Oscar, the very overt cultural critique that the movie seems to be levying is largely unrelated to the conflict he faces or to the way that conflict gets resolved.
But I would say that Henry's biggest talent is that he has this very disarming way of talking, which creates this very powerful but very strange sort of charisma. Like, even though he's obviously this very high-level intellectual, he's also just this small, disheveled guy who talks in this very modest, humble way. He makes lots of little cute jokes and never really seems to take himself that seriously.
What a great twist, you know? What a thing to think about. It's a good episode. Hooey, glad that's done.
It gives his videos a very casual, conversational quality that I think really helps in his ability to communicate his ideas to his viewers. The ambivalent way he carries himself, I think, also helps reinforce one of the big themes of his videos, which is that we live in a very sort of morally ambivalent universe. I really think that conversational delivery is a very underrated quality in YouTube videos. There's nothing wrong with scripting videos. I mean, I script all of mine, but too many YouTubers in the educational space these days write and read their scripts as if they are making an airline safety video. So I really like YouTubers who find some way to exude genuine human personality in their videos, even when their content is basically the equivalent of a master's thesis. Another guy who I think has a really excellent on-screen demeanor is the guy behind the channel Knowing Better. I don't know what his actual name is, and it seems like he's done a pretty good job at keeping it hidden. But anyway, this guy makes videos that are basically extended examinations of a single topic. Sometimes they're about historical things, like the Titanic, or the making of Mount Rushmore. Other times they're about some public policy issue, like privatization or gun control. If you've ever seen a John Oliver rant, I would say this guy's videos are like a mellower version of that sort of thing. The Knowing Better dude is another very smart guy who clearly puts a lot of research time into his videos. This makes him a great antidote to the sort of glib, superficial educational videos you see a lot of. You know, videos that purport to tell you the full story on something, but are really just a regurgitation of the Wikipedia page. Knowing Better is actually a very good name for the channel, since the guy seems to put a lot of effort into making you actually know a topic better than you did before. Like, we all know something about the Titanic, but after watching his video, you will realize how much detail and context you were missing. As I mentioned, the guy has a very attractive personality as well. He has very moderate political opinions and very moderate, disposition, just like in terms of how he carries himself.
So my goal with this video is not to sway you one direction or another. What I hope to accomplish is to serve as somewhat of a bridge between the two sides. I want you to understand where we were, where we are, and where some people want us to go, and at least be able to use the same vocabulary moving forward.
He has a sort of semi-nerdy high school teacher charisma that I think works well for him. There are two Knowing Better videos in particular that I think really show him at his best. One is about Christopher Columbus and the other is about Gandhi. These are both really fantastic, in-depth videos that really get into some very big questions about how we judge historical figures. I really recommend that you give them a watch. Now, me and the Knowing Better guy have one very big thing in common, and that is that our videos are often sponsored by Skillshare.
This video is brought to you by Skillshare. This video is brought to you by Skillshare. Skillshare. Skillshare.
Skillshare is a very cool website featuring over 27,000 video tutorials that can teach you how to do just about anything, be it in the realm of art, filmmaking, business, cooking, you name it. It is revealing that Skillshare sponsors channels like mine and Knowing Better, and perhaps other educational channels you watch too. What you can conclude from that is that the Skillshare people know that their website is attractive to people who have an appetite for high quality information communicated in a clear and compelling way. And that certainly defines Skillshare videos, which are defined by their charismatic, knowledgeable hosts, professional pacing and editing, and user-friendly interface. The best of all are their premium videos, which are really in like the highest quality tier as far as these sorts of things go. And you can get 2 free months of access to these premium videos, as well as everything else the site has to offer, if you subscribe using the link in the thing below. Supporting Skillshare is also an important way that you can support channels like mine and all of the other channels that Skillshare sponsors. You get something, we get something, it's win-win. Lastly, let me just quickly run through a couple of honorable mentions of other channels I've enjoyed. I'm sure 99% of you are already very familiar with